Here we are. We are back at the top. And the only reason we're saying the top is because we're on the top floor here at the Alico building. Pete Sousa Show, presented by Slovaceks. I drove by this morning. I didn't have a chance to pop in to see Ray. Last time I did that, he wasn't there anyways. So good to be back. Really exciting show today. We got a lot going on. We're going to talk Cowboys, college football. Matt Mosley is going to join us in segment 2, share some of his conversation with Jerry Jones yesterday post-game, and then we're going to have Cam Stewart in segment 3 going over a little bit of the Baylor basketball weekend. Cam was at the game Saturday where Baylor beat Arkansas. I'm calling the Baylor Sam Houston game on the radio tomorrow night here on the Baylor Sports Media Network, and that'll be a lot of fun. I'm getting ready for that one, looking at my boards for the first time this year. So Cam can fill us in on what's going on, all things Baylor, of course, all things Cowboys right now. It's a wreck. Going to the game yesterday, first Cowboys game I've been to this season, first Cowboys game I've been to since I moved to Texas. And it was rough. You know, I will tell you, let's start with a positive, okay? It's Veterans Day today. Just no words to thank the veterans, and the Cowboys did a hell of a job thanking the veterans yesterday in all kinds of different ways, with words, with emotions, with symbolism that moved people to tears in the crowd. So that was one part of it. At the risk of making a dicey transition, there were other reasons for tears in the crowd for Cowboys fans. Scotty, you're a diehard, dude. What's the thought process right now for a Cowboys fan?
You know, it feels like it's easy to get caught up in the moment and say this is a new low of just being so disgusted by Jerry Jones and the whole team organization situation.
Yeah.
But it really might be a new low.
Yeah.
It really, I mean, and I think I shared this with you before we started today. What's really frustrating is whenever Jerry talks, and we'll talk to Matt Mosley about that in a minute, but he's always like, well, we're about winning here. I'm going to do whatever it takes for us to win.
Yeah.
And anybody with their eyes open is shaking their head saying, you have done all the things to prohibit us from winning. Like this insistence that you are all about winning is insane.
Yeah.
It is a very frustrating place to be.
And if your eyes are open, just make sure you're not sitting in the south end zone of Cowboys Stadium, because I was there yesterday.
You can't see half the game.
Dude, look, here's the one thing I can shed light on as someone who was at the game yesterday. As a paying customer, of course you want to see the team win. And there's been issues with that. We can go into that a little bit with Matt, and I'll talk a little bit about it here. But, like, if you're a Cowboys fan who paid X amount of money, a lot, to go to the game, you can't see for part of it. Like, so that sucks for us or for Cowboys fans. I had my Reggie White jersey on yesterday. I was not in Cowboys attire. And that was one thing, too. We didn't hear much about it because things are so bad for the Cowboys that we're not talking about. Well, we are talking about some minutia, which is, you know, Jerry's being asked about. You know, things are bad when you're being asked about the sun and whether you're going to draw the curtains. And by doing so, I guess close the curtains. I think you draw them to open them, right? Yeah. So why don't you close the curtains? That's a very good question. And I would say from a fan experience, those curtains should be closed, just so not everybody who paid hundreds of dollars for tickets is like squinting and can't see. Now, your players, that's a next level conversation. One of the conversations after the game, and I do want to give full context into what Micah Parsons said to the media after the game, which has been one of those quotes that gone viral, whatever you want to put it, you know, first take, get up, all that ESPN stuff. So he was asked a question about Mike McCarthy and playing for Mike McCarthy. And I'm going to read the whole quote. He said, "That's above my pay grade if Mike's coach again next year. All coaching aside, Mike can leave and go where he wants to go. Guys I kind of feel bad for, guys like Zach Martin, and guys who might be on their last year on their way out, because that's who I wanted to hold the trophy for." He goes on to say, You want to win games and do great things with those type of legends who put in more time and work than Mike McCarthy ever did. So those are the kind of guys that I have so much sympathy and hurt for. Now, he mentioned Zach Martin. Martin's 33 years old, longest tenured Cowboy, a first-round pick in 2014, 9-time Pro Bowler. This quote now is all over the place and was taken out of context by a lot of folks. And upon seeing it, there's a lot of sticker shock, right? When you say you want to win games and do great things for legends who've put in a lot of time and work and more than Mike McCarthy ever did. I have to believe that Micah Parsons was talking about his career as a Cowboy, Zach Martin's, as compared to Mike McCarthy. I don't believe he was trying to railroad or crap on Mike McCarthy and his work ethic and the time he's put in. I think it was a body of work with the Cowboys organization. But now we've got Rex Ryan on Get Up, who is like saying, that's bullshit. And you never want to say that. It's yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you just don't want your players in there saying stuff to that degree about a coach post game that could be misconstrued. But hey, it's Micah Parsons. Look, he'll be talking on his podcast tomorrow night, and anything that we have questions about, he'll clear it up tomorrow. So that's the kind of access that these guys give us, and I have no issue with that side of it. But there is a tough situation when the culture of your organization has shifted to what's the owner going to say after the game, what player is going to pop off after the game. I mean, Mike McCarthy, they said it last night. I was listening to the post game on the drive home. They said, hey, let's throw it out of Mike McCarthy, who is with the 4 assembled members of the media who are there to speak with him after game. Everybody wants to talk to Jerry or is in the locker room looking for a hot quote, and they know that McCarthy will not give them that. On the field, the Cowboys are awful. I mean, 5 turnovers this game against the Eagles, 5 turnovers in their last home game. That's 10 turnovers at home in your last 2 games. Honestly, the Eagles are, I guess they're 6-2. They're really, I feel like they're, the Bill Parcells is, you are what your record says you are. I feel like the Eagles really honestly aren't that good. And the Cowboys should have been in this game. The first half was tightly contested. The Cowboys defense, it's very clear from being there and watching that the Cowboys have not given up on Mike McCarthy. The guys are playing hard. Overshown is unbelievable. I mean, if you're a Cowboys fan and you want to take away something positive, I had plays where, and I'm not the guy. I have a lot of experience in football, being around it in college, playing all that stuff. But I'm not going home and watching Y22 all night long. But to be at a game and to be able to lock in on an exciting player who you want to see, and just to watch Overshown every play, how not only is he so quick and has such great bursts, but his instincts, he's always around the football. It's amazing. And it happens before you know it. There are going to be great things from him over the course of his career. And, Cowboys fans should look forward to that. Mike McCarthy in his 18th season as an NFL coach, not much to look forward to for him as a Cowboys fan. And I don't think he'll be there much longer. I do think he'll last the remainder of the season. I think Jerry's made that very clear. It can go one of 2 ways now. Again, there's still so much football left. It's 80, as Jerry mentioned last night in his postgame, that's 80%, 8 games left. 80% of a college football season really is left. That is a lot of football. A lot of things can change. I think that with the quarterbacking situation, I do think we'll learn very soon that officially from the Cowboys, we'll learn that Dak is done for the rest of the year. And if he is, it's a tough one for the Cowboys, because what we saw yesterday from Cooper and from Trey Lance was both you barely saw flashes. There was a quick glimpse of, okay, that's who Trey Lance can be. But wow, I mean, it's even after he made a decent play, then he threw a ball right to the Eagles, right? I mean, this was down the stretch, and it was like insult to injury. I don't know. Oh, this is one thing I wanted to bring up, and this is kind of like nobody's really talking about this because there's so many bigger fish to fry. And the Eagles do travel well as a crowd, but I mean, it felt like almost like a Super Bowl in a sense that it was like 50-50 at the game. I mean, it was like the Eagles crowd that was there. I mean, and remember now, they're all chanting EAGLES, you know, EAGLES. I swear I can spell. You know, like doing that chant. I was a part of it a couple times, you know, singing Fly, Eagles Fly after they scored and on the way out of the game. Like, it's demoralizing. Like, it's gotten that low where you have fans taking over your stadium, like setting up shop. They're buying all your tickets online through these third parties because people don't want to go to the game. So like it was that stadium yesterday was overrun with Eagles fans. As a fan, Scotty, that's got to drive you batshit.
And this is not a new problem. I mean, Jerry wanted to build the best and biggest entertainment venue in America, more so than he wanted to build a home field advantage. And this, you know, when the Cowboys are good, I've heard there have been days in that building where it's all Cowboys and it's raucous. But for the most part, when the Cowboys aren't good, which obviously they are just terribly bad right now, it is well known that every away fan, if they're going to travel to one game, it's probably going to be Dallas. And so there's always a ton of visiting fans. I mean, that's not a new problem. So it doesn't surprise me that was your experience. And as the game went on, I'm sure those Eagles fans were way louder and louder.
And you know, but the problem with what you just notioned is we're talking about the Dallas Cowboys, right? This is a premier franchise in professional sports.
It's still the most valuable franchise in any sport in the world.
Yeah, we're not talking about the Los Angeles Chargers, where that happens and really still nobody cares. Something needs to change with the Cowboys. I still go back to my point about last year, man. That, like, look, they were undefeated at home. The table was set for them to run roughshod through the competition in the NFC and make it to the Super Bowl and win it. And the opportunity was blown on the field, Scotty. I know you may not feel this way, but like the pieces were in place for them to make that run last year. And they, for lack of a better term, shit the bed.
Yeah.
And that's not Jerry Jones.
Well,
tell me how it is.
Yeah. So the bottom line is it wasn't just last season. I think there was a 3 or 4 year window there.
Yeah.
When if Dak is operating without mistakes, you really do have one of the 4 or 5 best teams in the league. And I think you're right. This is the thing. Jerry, you can say that's not Jerry Jones, but like under Mike McCarthy, the Cowboys have consistently blown close games because of blunders, you know, whether it's working with the clock, you know, famously or whatever. And as the talent has changed, the Cowboys have gotten worse. And so I think this season is an indictment. Cooper Rush has, by all accounts, been a really good backup quarterback his whole career. And yesterday he looked lost. I mean, and that line is just terrible. I mean, and so, you know, part of what frustrates me about Jerry Jones, and this got some play a couple weeks ago, was in the offseason when he was asked, why aren't you going after Derrick Henry, or why, you know, and he said, oh, well, you should see the guys. There's guys that didn't even get on the field last year that can play. And it's like, brother, if they couldn't get on the field last year, they can't play. like, he's just clueless, Pete. He's just clueless. And I would say holding on to McCarthy as long as we have is part of the problem. And Jerry Jones has held on to lots of coaches for two seasons too long. Yeah.
It's a rough deal right now.
It's frustrating, man.
Yeah. Oh, it's got to be really frustrating. Listening to 105.3 driving back here, the fan out of Dallas, there was a lot of talk about, you know, sell the team, Jerry. It feels desperate. It just feels desperate. There was one Eagles fan that made inappropriate comments to my lovely better half and myself, who was right, an Eagles fan. But he said, how come you're not? Oh, she was wearing Dallas stuff. I had the Reggie White jersey on. This guy's a big dude. He had a Jalen Hurts jersey on, and he was definitely drunk. I heard him talking to his friends on the phone saying he was drunk. We had good seats. I wasn't quite sure these were his seats, but he was an Eagles fan. He was like totally like giving us love. but he told me that I should let her go home and wear my jersey while we made love together. She should wear my jersey. Yeah.
Sir.
Yeah, no, and that wasn't the only comment he made like that. He saw, like, as a comedian, he saw that got a laugh out of Christy and I. So then he used it with every other, like, woman that went by. He's like, you need to give her fantasy tonight. Her fantasy. I was like, okay.
Okay, sir.
Getting a little uncomfortable here. Yeah. Sights and sounds from the Cowboys game. But I've mentioned that what they did with the veterans was awesome. So props to the Cowboys for that. One other thing I want to mention, well, a couple other things I want to mention as Mosley is waiting in the wings. Actually, we'll get to Mosley here in a minute, and then I want to talk about BYU Utah, that game on Saturday night. But we'll get to that, I guess, in the third segment. We'll chat with Cam about that. I have some thoughts. But Matt Mosley coming up on the Pete Sousa Show, powered by the Rogue Media Network.
It's the Pete Sousa Show. Sports, Pete.
Nobody tells our stories better than our clients.
The difference is stark. I was rear-ended at a stop. I thought I was fine, and then once I got home, I realized it's a lot worse than I thought. I ended up having a ruptured disc. You say you're not hurting, and then an hour later, you're saying you're in all this pain. I just felt like most people would think that I was lying. And that's when I decided to call Daniel Stark. I owe a lot to Daniel Stark. They really got me what I deserved.
The difference is stark.
We definitely love our relationship and love Extraco. It's been an amazing experience.
They made the PPP process easier. They were reaching out to me saying, what can I do to help you? That made a huge difference because my stress level, when we shut down, to afterwards was night and day.
Our experience with Extraco has been phenomenal since the very beginning, so we love Extraco.
All is right with the basketball world. God's gift to the game of basketball, the Boston Celtics, are back in the NBA Finals, baby. I don't think the Mavs did anything special. They played well enough to win and win pretty good. You know what I mean? Yeah. I thought the Celtics didn't show up to play at all, and maybe if they showed some fight in the second half, they would have lost by 15 or so. Is he in the Red Sox Team Hall of Fame?
He is also in the Red Sox Hall of Fame.
Something about this guy being in the Team Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it did. So,
deserving, man.
Which seems like it fit. Sports.
Matt Mosley, are you with us?
Yes, I have you.
Matt Mosley, ESPN Central Texas, covering the Cowboys beat for well over a decade here. And Matt, I was in attendance yesterday. I was at the game. I paid my respects to Tom Landry pregame. I sat down, and I will tell you, one of the things I was surprised about the most were how many Eagles fans were in the building. Did that surprise you at all?
No, because I've seen other teams take over this building. There was several years ago when Romo was still the quarterback. The Texans fans were so loud. Tony had to go to a silent count at home, which was embarrassing. I've seen Steelers fans show up and take that place over like crazy. I've seen Packers fans show up in a big way. And I've actually seen Seahawks fans show up. So this is not some sort of great home field advantage, especially this year. I mean, this has really become one of the most embarrassing home teams in the NFL. They cannot win at home, and they lose in embarrassing fashion every time out. So it's a bad state of affairs for Jerry Jones and his Cowboys. And I did see pictures of you, and boy, this is an attractive young woman that you're spending time with. And I was glad she was in some Cowboys gear. I don't know. She may have borrowed some of your green to head out. I hope she wasn't front running with the Eagles, but I imagine she went down with the ship, as did many Cowboys fans. But if you did stay to the end, you kind of had the place to yourself yesterday. I'll put it that way.
We did stay to the end, and we did kind of have the place to ourselves. And you did talk to Jerry Jones afterwards. By the way, I figured out, Matt, I know I messaged you this, but I feel it's so great. I got to share it with the world. We finally figured out why Matt wears the sunglasses, because he needs them with the curtain open at Cowboys Stadium with that sun just beaming right through. By the way, Matt, I was in that end zone, and honestly, a whole nother thing, like for fan appreciation and fan relations, they should close the curtains, because you can't see for a good portion of that game sitting in that end zone.
Yeah. I mean, that is very unlike you to be in any end zone, given where your usual seats are. But, I think that can sometimes be an interesting vantage point. But Jerry, there's a few things in life he's very sensitive about. I mean, he's more sensitive, seriously, about that curtain thing than the paternity suit that was brought against him. Like he's okay dealing with like weird court cases, but him dealing with the sun coming into his building, because he somehow still thinks that's like a fun effect, like it's a desired thing that they wanted. And yet, with the game still in doubt, I mean, I don't know if it's ever truly in doubt, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It was close. It's 7-3. The Cowboys get a big turnover down there, leave a foul. There's much celebration in the building, and the Cowboys are like a 6-yard line, 1st and goal. Here you go. Let's make this thing 10-7. At least we have something interesting on our hands if the Cowboys take a 10-7 lead there. And they're throwing in the end zone, and CDE later says he just couldn't see it. You saw him put his hand up in front of his helmet like, I can't see the ball. And again, Jerry is extremely defensive about this, because he thinks that somehow, hey, it affects both teams. Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess so, but seems to come up a lot with the Cowboys. And every time it does, it's an embarrassing deal. And they have had events there that they put up curtains for to help with the glare. So they just don't act like they can't do it. And Jerry's response was, he said, what do you want me to do? Tear down the building? Nobody's asking him to demolish the building. Put up some curtains. And I like all the memes and the funny stuff with like vans pulling up with blinds at the stadium. And like, there's a lot of, like, if I did that kind of thing, like whatever that's called, fabricating or curtains or blinds or whatever people do, I would be having a field day with this. I would be using this as a way to increase my business. And I think anybody who's not doing that is missing out on a great opportunity. I will say, Pete, the one reason I kind of always make sure I'm at the Eagles Cowboys game, either place, but especially at home, where I live in the Metroplex. I don't think my listeners on the radio totally know that, because I don't make a big deal out of where I am. But I mean, it's really, that's your city, your place where you grew up. And I think you can understand this, because I think I have a tad bit of Philly in me, like just kind of that, a little bit of that attitude and a little bit of that approach. And what you would get a kick out of is, for years, when I would go on with Gargano or Eskin or any of those people, especially the people that are Missinelli that had accents, I would get into those interviews and you would hear me change my accent, and I would suddenly have like a Philly or like that Northeastern or a New York, whatever. I would suddenly start using that accent. Like I couldn't help myself. I would get like really into the cadence of it. That said, all those guys from there Tim McManus, Jeff McClain, you name it, Bob Brookover, Bob Ford before he retired. There's a guy writing novels now, like spy novels. Actually, it's kind of like James Bond stuff, named Rich Hoffman, who was a longtime columnist in Philly. Les Bowen, who I'm going to leave somebody out. I know Ray, but he was not one of my. But all those guys I just mentioned were just have just been great friends of mine over the years. In fact, Bob Ford, the decorated columnist who used to cover the Sixers back in the day, who's retired now from writing, he still listens to the Doomsday Podcast every week, even though he covered the Eagles for years.
Yeah.
And well, I appreciate that. But anyway, all that to say, man, I just have maybe that's why you and I have hit it off. I have a real kinship with the people from Philly, and they just, for whatever reason, I've got a lot of great friendships. In fact, yesterday, that guy, Marcus Mark, I've known him forever, and I made some crack about Embiid, and I could tell it was a little raw with him. And he gave me a nice little response, or told me kind of what was up. But that had to be he kind of got in. I didn't get into anything about like what he had written. I was just kind of like, hey, anybody come after you recently? I just made some kind of crack like that. And boy, he did not really. I mean, again, he's been a big fan of mine over the years, but he started giving me the whole lay of the land with Embiid and where people are on him.
It was one of those things, right? He had to prepare a statement to respond.
Yeah, and it was almost kind of like
looking for that.
Yeah, it's almost kind of like a raw thing with him. Yeah. You could tell, like, that's not fun when somebody comes after you like that, publicly, and hopefully the newspaper and everything backed him. But anyway, the other guy, Silsky, however you say his name,
Selesky.
The other Selesky, yeah, he's a buddy. I mean, he's a close enough. No, you got a different guy in mind. Now, there's a guy named Seltzer who was a great friend of mine from up there that worked for the Sixers organization. But
Selesky was at the Wall Street Journal, right? Am I right about that? He bounced
Mike Silsky is the way I've always thought his name was pronounced, was like he's now a columnist for the Inquirer.
Gotcha.
The Philadelphia Inquirer. Yes, and like this dunking book that he's just put out or whatever. And anyway, he's a buddy. Not enough for me to really learn his last name, but people still screw up your last name, I'm sure, occasionally. Not me.
I want to ask you, I want to hit this one thing with you too. The culture around the team. That quote that Micah Parsons, first of all, it's been taken out of context all over America, which frustrates me and has to frustrate you as a guy who is actually on the beat and is there, and who Colin Cowherd will call in when he wants to know what's going on at Ground Zero. At the Star and at Cowboy Stadium. But regardless of how it was said, it's very clear that these guys in the locker room, there's no real decorum, I guess, anymore as far as an organizational message. It's got to be like herding cats for my man Tad Caper over there, and who else is working for him. But do you see, like, how important is it that changes? That it goes back to how it was with like a Parcells when you were covering the team, or maybe, right? I mean, it could be a Bill Belichick. Like, that needs to change, right? I mean, like, and how important is it that it changes? I'm asking you.
Yeah. By the way, I'm not like that concerned on this particular thing about something being taken out of context, because if you say it, and I'm sure he'll clarify, and I wasn't there when he said it. I have listened to it, and I don't really think he felt any ill will toward McCarthy. It was really more about taking up for a veteran teammate who he looks up to. And so I agree that probably, but I'm just so used to everything being blown out of proportion when it comes to the Cowboys that I'm not really surprised by this. Micah is someone who's popular enough and talks enough that he's got to kind of have a better understanding. So I don't I know it's easy to beat up on the media, and we all deserve it at times, but I don't totally blame everybody on this one, because the way it kind of came across was really the quotes themselves sort of, make it look like, he's already, the team has moved on from Mike McCarthy. And quite honestly, I think that's probably true. I think what Micah didn't really mean to say, but what he actually may have been pretty truthful, was just that's not where the sentiment is. It's not like anybody. I mean, this team's done. This team knows it's done. Now, I'm not saying they won't go out and try to play hard or whatever, but they don't have any talent. They're horrible at quarterback now. I mean, Dak wasn't playing great either, as Jerry pointed out. So I didn't have any big problem with what the media is doing with this, because Micah, most times when you hear players or somebody say, I was taken out of context, it's someone who's regretting what they said, and they're using the media to kind of get out of it.
Okay.
And the thing is, the public has such a distrust a lot of times of the media that they'll kind of buy that. They like beating up on the media. So, you'll hear that, but I think some of what he said was right on the money, in that I think they know this is it's kind of like Rex Ryan said. Rex Ryan said, hey, this guy's a good coach, but this is dead man walking. And that's very, very true. Like, you somehow had some feeling that Baylor was going to turn it around when the rest of us had no feeling of that. And the Bears did have turned it around. I think anybody who would act like now that the Cowboys have a chance to turn this around would be truly a hold of some good stuff, right? Yeah. They would be smoking something.
All right,
and
and that leads me to my last question with you. We still have 8 games left. Like, where in your experience covering this organization, knowing Jerry like you do, talking to him every post game, where do they go from here? How do they approach the remaining second half, pretty much, of this schedule?
Well, this is where it gets kind of rough, because these coaches are all like on 1-year deals, or they're in the last year of their deal. And so they know they're done. And yet, to your point, they have like 36 to 40 practices left. I mean, it's like, that's a really rough deal when you kind of know, it's like, actually, there have been a couple of teams in recent years that have actually gotten off to this start and turned it around. Like, I think Green Bay was 3-6, and they made the playoffs last year and obviously crushed the Cowboys in that opening round. So it can be done, but with this team, help does not seem to be on the way. So I mean, this is going to be bad. I mean, Jerry's going to have to do some misdirection plays. And I think the best thing for Jerry he can sell is hope for the future. So let's say they do lose a bunch of games and only win 4 or 5 games this year, which is a very real possibility. Well, then you can play up the fact that they'll have like a top 5 draft pick perhaps. And then you pair that with the fact that Deion Sanders is having a great year at Colorado, and they're 7-2 and are a real threat to end up in the college football playoff. So that's where this thing's headed. You saw it even today.
Yeah. That
nationally that's becoming a storyline, and don't think that Jerry hasn't picked up on that. And so Jerry will, I don't know if he'll stoke the fires or what he'll do, but just remember, I've brought up Deion in the past. I think it was last year sometime when Deion got off to a good start, and Jerry just like almost got emotional, and he went off on how much he thinks of this man and this coach. And so that adds another interesting layer to what's about to happen.
Or would that be smoke and mirrors to get through the rest of the year?
Well, Vegas does not even have Deion in their top 5, but again, they are very close. And And he, other than Jimmy, let's not act like he's made a lot of hires of college people. So I don't think it's going to happen, but I understand why people are bringing it up. It's worth at least,
realistic chance of Bill Belichick?
Probably more than Deion. I think Vrabel is the odds-on favorite from Vegas right now. Mike Vrabel, because he is a sort of tough as nails, younger, has done it type coach. And I think Vrabel certainly would be of interest to the Cowboys and would be right now. I think McCarthy's done. They let him coach into the final year of his contract. This was already kind of a bonus year in a sense for him. And so Dak's injury is not going to save him. So this is, I would say there is a 95% chance that McCarthy will be out at the end of the season. And barring some kind of miracle turnaround, it's almost like 100% chance.
Yeah. Matt Mosley, nobody covers the Cowboys like him. You can catch him this afternoon, 1660 ESPN Central Texas. And of course, the Doomsday Podcast is up now on the Rogue Media Network with Ed Werder. Yo, Matt, you're the best. I appreciate it, dude.
Pete, thanks for having me. I'll holler at you soon.
All right, bud.
It's the Pete Sousa Show. Sports, Pete.
Nobody tells our stories better than our clients.
The difference is stark. I was rear-ended at 70 miles an hour. I was injured, had a concussion. The insurance company, they delayed. They were playing games from the initial conversation. They weren't going to help me. The biggest thing I learned through this is that you can't go through this alone. I called Daniel Stark. They were going to help me, and everything was going to be all right. Daniel Stark got me 10 times the insurance company offered.
The difference is stark.
We definitely love our relationship and love Extraco. It's been an amazing experience.
They made the PPP process easier. They were reaching out to me saying, what can I do to help you? That made a huge difference because my stress level, when we shut down, to afterwards was night and day.
Our experience with Extraco has been phenomenal since the very beginning, so we love Extraco.
You are here with your shoot first point guard, Corey Dickman.
Also, if you're not creating new fans in a small market, then you're not creating that base of people to go to games and pay for merchandise and pay for stuff and concessions at the Moda Center and yada yada.
Yeah, let's talk draft. That's the only thing we have to look forward to.
The only thing we have to look forward to.
That's what I will teach my son. You will teach your daughter as Blazers fans. It's like, look, the two most exciting times of the year for us are the draft lottery and the draft itself. Like, here we are. This is our thing. Give me some memories and thoughts. I know you had mentioned kind of the first time you had met Bill. What were some of those first memories that came back when you heard the news?
Sports.
All right. Here we got him, Cameron Stewart. He is with us after a big weekend. We just talked to his partner in crime, Matt Mosley, who Cam will be alongside here in just a few hours.
Can't wait.
Cam, let's start with what's hot. Okay, as far as college football is concerned, you're the host of Locked On Baylor. A lot of scuttlebutt in the Big 12. I can't even begin to tell you the communication from the conference to us, who for this Big 12 show we're doing this week about like what we're staying away from. But it is
really,
yeah. I mean,
they can do that.
Yeah, dude. I mean, it's their show, and I get it. In my opinion, they'd never let me say this. I would send Utah and their athletic director to the moon today. I'm like,
don't let it hit you.
I'm so frustrated over that comment. What he said after the game, I thought was egregious. I did not appreciate him saying we were liked being in the Big 12, but now we don't.
But now we're not.
It's like
so. I put these side by side, Pete. On Locked On Baylor,
major cojones to take shots at the conference. You go after the officials, whatever.
I'm sure.
But you bring the conference in, making it sound like the conference had something to do with officials stealing that game that, oh, by the way, they didn't steal is kind of a bummer.
I want to take you back because I put two sound bites kind of side by side. I want to take you back to early February. It was a game you were doing at the Foster Pavilion between Baylor and Iowa State men's basketball.
Yeah.
And all hell breaks loose in the second half. Scott Drew gets ejected for the first time ever for just like standing outside the coach's box, which, Pete, happens every coach, every game. And then afterwards, it just becomes a ref show. The Iowa State goes on a 20-0 run, and 13 of those points are at the free throw line. I remember it. I was in that building. It was as hostile as it had gotten I've ever seen for a Baylor game. Like they wanted to get at these refs. And after the game, Mac Rhodes, the Baylor AD, went up to the podium, or it was right after Scott had come off, and he didn't actually go on the podium. He just said, "Hey guys, I know this is a big, like divisive topic. What happened with the officiating tonight?" He's like, "I don't usually call the league office or anything like that, but that was an embarrassment. Like that our league is better than that. We have a lot of good refs in this league, but this was not a good crew, and we're too good a conference for this." And kind of put that side by side next to Mark Harlan, the Utah AD, where they essentially say the same thing, except for that one thing we just talked about of Harlan saying, we were really excited about being in the Big 12, and now we're not. And it's like, that's kind of bullshit. That's where if I'm Brett Yormark, like what you're saying, I'm like, okay, good luck. Yeah. Go back to the Pac-12. See how that works for you.
Yeah.
We wanted you, but you also really wanted us. And at this point, you need us. So I don't want to hear that. And I agree with the call on the field. I thought it was a hold.
Yeah.
I thought it's close. I think it's closer than some people think. And so I get being emotional after something like that.
Yeah,
but
sure.
You've got to have more class than that. Like, I'm sorry, you just do.
Yeah.
And that's why you get a $40,000 fine. By the way, max was $25,000. But yeah.
And by the way, that Baylor situation was bananas.
It was wild.
It was way worse.
And it went on for a significant chunk of that game.
Yeah, that was crazy. That he had been thrown out. He was thrown out by an official. I think it was like a D2 guy that was a call up.
Is that what it was?
It was a guy
he had been suspended by a conference before.
I remember not Kip Kissinger. There was another guy who was ref in the game who had a kind of a rough year. But there was a guy on that crew who was like brand new, and that was the guy who had gotten involved.
Jeb Hartness.
Is that who it was?
Yeah, that's the one who ejected Scott.
Yeah. So, and you don't hear that name hardly ever, right?
No, I couldn't remember it when I was doing Locked On Baylor yesterday, but somebody in the comments did. So
he was.
Scotty V.
He was. Kip Kissinger was not on that game. I forget the other guy's name, but it's a guy that's totally cool. Comes up to the broadcast table before. Chill dude. Doesn't matter. It doesn't mean he's a good ref, but I like him.
Well, yeah.
But
that's what we do as journalists, by the way. We're very Trump-like in that. Well, if you like us, then we're probably going to go to bat for you.
Is she attractive?
She's
not nasty.
Yeah.
She's great.
Yeah.
So what about so a couple things about that game. One, and our buddy Drake Toll and I were sharing the same brain on this because I listened to Locked On.
Big 12, yeah.
Locked On Big 12.
Well, not to be confused with my show.
Locked On Baylor, which I also listened to yesterday.
I know.
And we'll get to that. We got a little bit of time here because I do have unpacking to do with you with Baylor basketball. I agree. Like two things. Once ESPN, it was not ESPN's fault, but Dave Fleming was calling the game and he was calling it with Brock Osweiler, and they noticed the flag, but it was like if I remember correctly, like the graphic wasn't on the screen. Like it didn't get like. So it seemed like it was like a shot.
That it was done.
Yeah. And that wasn't the case at all. And
in fact, they probably saw it. But that's a humongous play in the game. If that's a holding call on the offense, you don't want to, step over the game sealing play to be like, oh, well, there's a flag here. Whoa. And then it's
100%.
I've had to learn that actually in high school football. Yeah.
No, 100%. And so they kind of ride it out with the rest of us, but it seems like almost like a sneak attack. And then that came after a timeout, which was clearly called, but the stadium was so loud at Rice Eccles that you couldn't hear the whistle blow.
But the play went on for a couple of seconds.
Yeah.
Like when Retzlaff is thrown into the turf, I'm like, what's happening? What is he doing?
It was frustrating to think like it wasn't as bad as it looked. And there was a point in the game, and this is a whole nother conversation, where I thought to myself, like, wow, maybe BYU isn't that good, in a sense where like every team that goes on to win a conference championship or a national championship, they always have those games where they barely get out alive, right? Well, for BYU, I thought that was Oklahoma State. So now you have another dance where you're way too close to the edge.
Yep.
This time with a rival and a really good defense in Utah. So maybe you can get a pass on that, but we're going to find out. I mean, that's the beauty of football and games and schedules. Like, they're going to play, and we're going to find out how good they are. They start with Kansas. Kansas is trying to knock off a ranked team for the third week in a row on Saturday. So
they're all of a sudden, and they need every win. They're 3-6.
Yeah.
They need every win.
So,
but there's a lot of, I've heard this comparison before. There's a lot of 2022 TCU there.
Okay.
It's a lot of that. In fact, I seem to remember TCU kicking a pretty important game-winning field goal in a rival game on the road, in a game that they probably didn't have any business winning, but neither did BYU this weekend, but they went out, they won.
But they don't have anybody on that team who was
Max Duggan.
Dude. Well, Duggan was awesome, but who's the wide receiver? The kid from Temple?
Quentin Johnston.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that dude was a beast. And he's still a beast now. He's playing well for the Chargers.
Well, now he's playing well. Yeah.
Look.
He's a lean first year and change.
So, but he didn't look. That's a guy that you got the ball to at any time in the game, and he was a threat to score. BYU doesn't quite have that.
Yeah, I like Lassiter.
Well,
you're right. He's not the same, but I like him.
And Retzlaff too is likable in a sense where
BYU.
Yeah, that's he says that, by the way.
That's great, man.
That's
so great.
Yeah, that's him, not us. But which is pretty awesome.
Did you see there was some awesome tweet that was like, because Utah was in the all red, which looked really cool, the all red versus all blue. I didn't think it would look cool, but it did. And it said, like, what other time have we heard about a famous Jew leading the Lord's chosen people through the Red Sea? It was great. It was great.
He's embraced it. Look, he's probably one of the only Jewish people on that campus. You could.
I mean, yeah.
I
mean, outside of athletes.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I don't know that you get any.
And everybody loves him. He talks about Provo being a magical place, and magical things have been happening this year. Another one of them on Saturday night. They got LJ Martin back to 100%, and that was very clear on Saturday night. They got the other dude who's a change of pace back who's really good. And defensively, they seem to be in the right place all the time. So, and by the way, you get big props too if you're Jay Hill, their defensive coordinator, because they didn't. I don't know that Utah scored again in the second half or scored another touchdown.
They did not score a point in the second half.
Yeah, so I mean, that's great adjustments, and you take that.
No, it's the refs.
Yeah.
No, trust me, Pete. It's the refs. They shut out Utah in the second half.
Cameron.
Yes.
All right, you were at the game on Saturday.
Baylor.
Baylor, Arkansas.
Yeah.
An
old SWC.
Now, you brought up an interesting point. I mentioned I'm calling the game radio tomorrow on Sam Houston Baylor. And it's really cool. You brought up a really good point that they played zone the entire game against Arkansas. One, because Arkansas can't shoot the three, and two, because Gonzaga ate them up.
On the switch man.
When they went man to man. How do they look in this zone, and do you think they'll continue to play it?
It looks great in it, and yes, I think they will. But
is there a specific coach you can point to as the architect of this?
Of this zone?
Yeah,
I mean, it's really Scott.
Okay.
The amoeba zone is what they call
the
it.
Amoeba defense, UNLV. Yeah. You know that, right? That's what Tark used to run.
Yes. So Tark, Tark would probably be the closest. I mean, there's obviously some Tark and some Jim Boeheim in there, but it's not. Boeheim was the 2-3, like the kind of classic quintessential. This is a little bit different. In fact, sometimes it's a 3-2, especially when there's so much of the game played out on the perimeter now. But I wouldn't be surprised if the game you're doing tomorrow, we see some more man-to-man switchability, just because Sam Houston is not at the level of the top, the 2 top 20 matchups that they've had to start the season. So maybe they do try to figure that out, because some of that is, we talked about last Tuesday after they lost to Gonzaga, the chemistry, the talking, and like that is hours in the gym to get that thing right. The 2021 team was great at man-to-man defense. They've also been doing it for a year plus.
Yeah.
So you might see some more tomorrow night, but I think I wouldn't be surprised if this becomes a pretty heavy zone team, which works really well for Baylor on the defensive end. I think that they did it at times last year. It worked really well, but I don't know how well it complements their offense long term.
What did you like the most about Baylor's performance Saturday night?
It really would have just been defensively overall, but I thought they were aggressive while taking care of the basketball. They did not have many turnovers. 8, was that it?
8 on the night. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome, because there were times last year where I was like, hey, if you can get down to 11 or 12, you'll win some more games. And here they are at 8 against the top 20 team against the Calipari defense. Too. Yeah. And so they were also aggressive. Roach took the ball to the hole. Jaden Nunn was the most aggressive offensive player on the floor. I loved that for him, and it led to a big night. He led Baylor in scoring.
4 threes.
Norchad was good at had a nose for the basket offensively. So they did all those things without throwing the ball around. I do like that aspect of things, but also I think what might have been part of that is that they didn't move the ball around quite enough.
Okay. Baylor didn't.
Yeah.
Okay. And who do you put that on?
Well, it's everyone.
Okay.
It's everyone. I would like to see Jeremy Roach take a little bit more of assertiveness, take more leadership of the offense on the floor, because he's the guy who comes in saying, nope, I'm a point guard. I played some 2 last year with the whole Jared McCain thing at Duke. But I'm coming here to be the point guard. I am the point guard. And they have had 22 assists in 2 games.
Yeah.
And I know it's top 20 opponents, but that's not good enough. And you see it out there when the game is played, especially in that first one against Gonzaga. There's just a ton of ISO ball. And I don't know that this team has the individual talent to do that, because you have to have like NBA talent to do that. There's not many college basketball teams that can play ISO all the time. And I just doubt that Baylor is one of them. And I on the rewatch counted either 8 or 9 possessions where either 1 or 2 guys touched the ball. That ain't going to do it. And in fact, Baylor was moving.
That was
more.
Gonzaga, or that was?
No, on Saturday.
Okay.
A game they won and never trailed, which, on paper looks great, but just that was the only real concerning part to me. And when Rob Wright was on the floor running the show, I thought their offense moved more. They moved more without the ball. So I don't know if that's all in Jeremy Roach or what, but there was more movement from what I saw when Rob Wright was out there. He played 17 minutes, I want to say. And I think it would be really intriguing to see what those splits would be if Wright was up to Roach's level defensively.
Yeah.
To see how much they would be, how even that split would be. But VJ, you mentioned VJ. VJ played well.
Yeah.
I didn't think so. Or I thought he was okay when I was actually at the game. And on the rewatch, I was really impressed.
Body language at the game. Like, this is the team that they really got kicked in the nuts.
Yeah. They were fired up.
How do they look? How was the emotion?
From what I could tell, it was pretty good. They were really into it. It didn't look like they were taking plays off on either end, even though there were some of those possessions where only 2 guys touched the ball. No, I thought it was good. I thought there was great energy from that bench. And Scott and his staff were way into it, which, they usually are. Yeah. But it definitely kept building and building. The harder they played. Again, they did not trail in the game. There's a couple times Arkansas tied it. A couple times Arkansas got it close. But really, this was kind of an arm's length game. And I thought VJ played real well defensively. He can switch on to anybody. In terms of getting there was the issue on Monday for all of them. But he can guard power forward.
Okay.
He's that big and solid.
you lost. We're 2 games into the season. Obviously, that's not enough really to make any kind of prediction, or you could base maybe a little theory on it, though. Like, I'm curious to see what you think about this team now losing 2 major pieces to its coaching staff. Have you noticed anything, assistants, when you have a very successful program like Scott Drew has, your assistants are going to leave. They're going to get offers for better jobs. And, you got an assistant at Kentucky, and now you got a head coach, right, at Florida International.
Atlantic.
What's that?
Florida Atlantic.
Florida Atlantic.
FAU.
So what do you any differences you've noticed, any nuances of this team playing differently? Offensively.
Pretty much all of it. Yeah. So Jacobs ran the offense. He was the one in 18-19 that kind of changed their identity mid-season. He actually talked about this with us on the Mosley show last year when he took the FAU job. But people forget, Baylor was a pretty old school offense with a zone defense for a lot of years. They posted up Jonathan Motley 200 times in 2017 when he was a third-team All-American. Then they went to the Sweet 16. And 2 years later, when Tristan Clark got hurt at the beginning of the conference schedule, they needed to change their identity completely. And they became a 3-point shooting team with that European high ball screen, which they've done for the last 5 years. And they were a top 10 offense each of those years. You have not seen that. No, there's not a ton of movement on the perimeter. You see it sometimes, some of that high ball screen, but not the high ball screen pick and roll that they were really good at the last couple of years and opened up a lot of open 3-point shots. They have not taken a lot. I don't have the usage number in front of me, but they have not taken a bunch of threes, which, can be okay. But the thing with that offense was it opened up a lot of open threes.
Yeah.
And so as much as they've taken the last couple of years, you weren't saying they took a bunch of bad shots. So
they've been
that's just looked different. There's just
the
hasn't been as much
3-point
movement.
percentage this year is 22%, 10 of 45 on the year. 2 games, whatever, but clearly you're
just
not
making it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not working with a bunch of marksmen so far.
No,
but maybe that's
in
because
fact,
like you mentioned, they're trying to get free in one-on-one matchups, and that's just not how you get good looks.
Yeah. Yeah. And in fact, there was a part of the game on Saturday that I turned to Mosley and I was like, "Why? Let's see how they play offense here," because there's 3 guys on the
By
floor.
the way, Matt and Cam go everywhere together.
Yeah.
So you know.
Yeah. I'm not allowed to go anywhere without them. There's 3 guys on the floor for Baylor right now who are not 3-point shooters. And it would have been Edgecombe, Norchad, and I got to look back to see who the third guy would be.
Omier?
Norchad Omier, yeah. He was
okay.
one of them. I don't know if it was Josh O. I don't know if they had played together, but it could have been. Okay. It was someone like that. Maybe it was Rob Wright, who's, a good offensive player, but I wouldn't fancy him as like a big-time 3-point shooter. And so I just remember thinking, like, they haven't had a situation like this. They haven't had a lot of lineups they put out there the last few years that they had 3 guys who you don't respect as 3-point shooters.
Yeah.
And it was okay, those couple of minutes. It wasn't long, but that's where I'm going to be intrigued because they have guys who can score on the inside, both at guard and with Norchad, to see how much of that 2-point percentage, 3-point percentage split is going to be a lot different than the last few years.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this season and what Baylor has to offer. One last thing, this is back to Utah and BYU. I wanted to bring this up. Did you notice how when they were trying to hurry up, whether it was Utah or BYU, that the official that was making sure that they didn't snap the ball ahead of time was out of shape and he couldn't get out of the way in time?
Yeah,
did you notice that?
Yeah. It reminds me of high school game.
I was like, dude, you got officials need to put a guy that's athletic there. Like that should be.
Yeah, it should be a requirement.
It matters.
I think the same way about the police, but like, you know what I mean? Like, I guess they do something every year, but like, if you're not in shape, you can't do this job.
Yeah.
And it's the same way with officials. I mean, those guys, most of them are in insanely good shape.
Yes.
Like the NFL level, especially, like that's not messing around.
And
like,
girls too.
Yes.
Right? Like,
women. Yes.
Yeah. The women, but they're in tip-top
You got to
shape.
be basically
this guy,
almost
the guy in question, clearly was not. I mean, or maybe he just wasn't quick enough to serve in that role.
Maybe
he was holding stuff up.
There's difference. Yeah.
Right?
Yes. Yeah. I definitely caught on to that. It's kind of funny.
I actually made a note.
Did you?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh wow.
Fatty.
Ref that spots the ball before the snap needs to be in shape.
Dude, we had a guy in high school. This is very quick. I know we got to wrap it up.
Yeah.
But this guy was like 300 pounds, man, easy.
It's not
and
cool.
He was an umpire in football.
Okay.
So it was just like, dude, like that's not good for anybody. I know they're volunteers and you need the help or whatever it is. They get paid a little bit, but you know what I mean? Like, it's not much, but like you gotta have someone who can run up down the field. You know what I mean? Like that's bad. I know it's Massachusetts high school football, but come on. Anyway, but like all the players would know. They'd be like, "Oh, he's on the game." Like, he looked like Mark Mangino, man. Like he's on the game. They know it's gonna be an adventure. Yeah.
My big run-in with an official when I was playing was a guy told me I wrote free OJ on my wrist. And the guy made me tape over it. I sure did, yeah.
Did you mean it, or was that a gag? Like
no, I meant it. I mean, I was an idiot. It was, the fall of 1994. I thought I was some kind of like outlaw,
Pete wore free OJ.
It was look, we didn't really know what was going on. It was right after he'd been arrested. It was this fall after he'd been arrested. All right, that'll do it. I followed the guy's rules.
Oh my God, we gotta have some pictures of that.
No,
was that the first game you did it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's too bad.
I used to write like bars on my wrists. I was weird. Okay.
Free OJ.
We will see you tomorrow. Thank you so much, Slovacics. Thank you so much to D1. We got some big news coming about D1 soon. Our D1 here in Waco. Get excited. D1 all over the country is booming. But yeah, we'll get to the other sponsors too a little more tomorrow. Daniel Stark Injury Lawyer, Socorro Family Ford. We're doing live shows out there soon. Central Texas, we love you. We'll see you tomorrow.
It's the Pete Sousa Show. Sports.
Nobody tells our stories better than our clients.
The difference is stark. I was rear-ended at a stop. I thought I was fine, and then once I got home, I realized it's a lot worse than I thought. I ended up having a ruptured disc. You say you're not hurting, and then an hour later, you're saying you're in all this pain. I just felt like most people would think that I was lying. And that's when I decided to call Daniel Stark. I owe a lot to Daniel Stark. They really got me what I deserved.
The difference is stark.
We definitely love our relationship and love Extraco. It's been an amazing experience.
They made the PPP process easier. They were reaching out to me saying, what can I do to help you? That made a huge difference because my stress level, when we shut down, to afterwards was night and day.
Our experience with Extraco has been phenomenal since the very beginning, so we love Extraco.
I mean, yeah, a new coach comes in, they're going to turn the roster. I think that's just we've got all these transfer portal stats and what Deion did and what Fritz has done. I mean, that's the deal, man. That's the game that's being played nowadays.
Maybe a little bit unknown at quarterback. I mean, unknown to the rest of the world, but he dove into the portal and got a guy who is super, super athletic.
South Dakota State's really good. Give us a little bit of breakdown about what they can do and what Oklahoma State needs to be worried about.
Look at that form right there. I need to say nothing else about this because I found one.
It is Matt Mosley, and it's the Obstructed View Podcast Rogue Media Network. I think they're learning that there's really no wonderful view of me. See, I feel like they think this feed's going to be really wonderful.
There must have been, no BS, like 20 scouts, 15 to 20 NBA scouts there to see him, and he was top 5.
When your old number wasn't working, I went through various channels to track you down. So unfortunately, you can never get away from me. But I'm happy. Man. I'm happy to have you today.
No, thanks for having me. And we always family, no matter where I'm at.
All is right with the basketball world. God's gift to the game of basketball, the Boston Celtics are back in the NBA Finals, baby. I don't think the Mavs did anything special. They played well enough to win, and win pretty good. You know what I mean? I thought the Celtics didn't show up to play at all, and maybe if they showed some fight in the second half, they would have lost by 15 or so. Is he in the Red Sox Team Hall of Fame?
He is also in the Red Sox Hall of Fame.
Something about this guy being in the Team Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I did.
So,
Deserving, man.
Which seems like it fits.
Welcome to a special edition of the Doomsday Podcast. Look at this. We got one of the great golfers in the world, certainly one of the great pass rushers in NFL history.
But he also had a vision for you. And so it was like you had the best of both worlds, right? You had somebody on you early, and then you had somebody who was maybe
more relaxed.
What were a couple of your biggest takeaways?
The person you referred to that I spoke with, I've spoken to some personnel people and general managers of the league to get some, independent, objective assessments of the players the Cowboys picked, and we'll go through that. Has the general manager changed at all in the draft for you?
Nope, it's been the same since I was here the last time.
We are Rogue Media Sports.